Mr. Obama said in an interview last week that India may start pulling apart if the minority rights are not protected.
It was quite arrogant, to be very honest, for the former president to upstage the current president of the United States, who happened to be his vice president.
Yeah. Career in DC, New York, Los Angeles, or a career in Bombay?
Oh.
Shaved ice cream on the beaches of Miami, or vada pav in Bombay, or dosa in Bangalore?
Oh gosh, or how about a shaved ice cream in Goa?
George Bush, Prime Minister Modi, Joe Biden.
But I certainly will say Prime Minister Modi is, I believe, one of the most important world leaders today. Om Jai Jagdish Hare, Swami Jai Jagdish Hare, Bhakta Jano ke Sankata, Dase Jano ke Sankata, Shaname Durakare. Om Jai Jagdish Hare.
As we start this new series to report on the prominent Indians, the Indian diaspora, and also the prominent Americans who have done India proud, we start this series and make this powerful debut with none other than the star of the last week, Millben, who has actually created a rage back in India when she touched the feet of Prime Minister Narendra Modi. To know more about what was the essence of this entire episode, which she actually created a furore by doing this, we're joined by none other than Millben herself. Welcome to the show, Ms. Millben. It's actually been a privilege knowing you in DC over the last 1 week or so, ever since you made a powerful debut with the Indian diaspora, which has actually created a big impact back home.
Well, namaste to you, Rohan, and hello to all of your audience and all of the folks watching. It's just an honor to be here with you.
Right. First of all, I want to congratulate you, Ms. Millben, because of the fact that when you sang the national anthem there on the stage in front of thousands of Indian diaspora and none other than the Prime Minister Narendra Modi, what was that feeling about? Tell me and take me through that feeling.
Well, it was such an honor, I tell you, to be a part of the official state arrival visit for His Excellency Prime Minister Narendra Modi, certainly to celebrate the U.S.-India relationship. It was just a really remarkable week, and to have been invited to be a part of that was the greatest honor. Certainly to share the stage with the Prime Minister, to finally have an official meeting with the Prime Minister. I was just really honored, to have great respect, great admiration for the Prime Minister, so I was honored to be a part of that and to really experience this beautiful culture and land that has become my family, India in totality. 1.5 billion people in our big family, I'll say, but it's become a great family to me. And so just having the opportunity to be a part of the week and to celebrate the U.S.-India relationship, certainly to celebrate the Prime Minister and all that he's doing in India, I was deeply, deeply honored.
Now, considering the fact that one of your videos there, which has actually gone viral, is that of touching the feet of Prime Minister, I want to understand, Ms. Millben, was this impromptu, was this planned, or was this just on the spot of the moment that you thought that since he's an old man? What was it like? Explain me.
Well, to be very honest, it was really an impromptu moment, and particularly because I was not aware that the Prime Minister was going to be on stage during the singing of the anthems. And so when the Prime Minister, we were standing backstage when he started to make his way up to the stage, and of course the audience was erupting in excitement, and it was a beautiful moment. I thought, wow, this is going to be a moment where I would formally certainly honor the Prime Minister. And as I have done for singing for 4 consecutive U.S. presidents and other heads of state, there are moments that happen where you are on stage with the president or
Correct.
a world leader. And so I, in a few seconds, started to think about certainly what my parents always taught me, how you certainly honor a great leader, but also how you honor your elder. And in my beginning days, in my Hindi classes, certainly I have to give a lot of credit to my Hindi teacher, Dr. Mokshraj, who's based in Rajasthan. For a period of time, he was also the cultural diplomat at the Embassy of India here in Washington, D.C.
Right.
And so in our beginning classes, we actually didn't start learning Hindi until later on. Our beginning classes were learning about the values, the traditions of the Indian culture.
So this was one of that?
And that was one of it, yes. One of the several classes we talked about these traditions being the respect for elders. There's similarities between the Indian culture and the African American culture in that regard. We have that same regard, how we take care of our elders and respect our elders. And so in those few seconds that I had before walking out on stage, I said a little prayer, and to be very honest, Rohan, it was God that said, you take this moment and you honor the Prime Minister in front of this audience and in front of the world watching. And I think that's important for our young people to see. I think that's important for the world to see, how we honor our leaders, how we honor our elders. And so I was, just as soon as I finished the anthem, I didn't expect the Prime Minister to walk towards me either. Certainly I was being respectful of the protocols with the Secret Service and folks, but as the Prime Minister certainly started to walk over, I felt that this would be a moment to honor him. And he was so gracious and so kind.
Indeed.
He really was.
I also want to understand, Ms. Millben, from you, that considering the fact that you spent a significant time during the Bush administration serving the White House, what was it like from one administration to move to another administration and then see this sort of a gesture where Mr. Biden held Prime Minister's hand and walked him to the White House, and also ensure that he did in front of the Indian diaspora? So what are the differences that you see between the Bush administration, the Obama administration, and that of the Biden?
Well, I'll start with what I see are the consistencies from having served as a young staffer in the Bush White House to then going on and singing for President Bush, President Obama, President Trump, and certainly here last year for President Biden. What I have seen all of them do well is and certainly what we do well in America, is we would always be kind and gracious to our friends.
So who's your personal favorite?
Between
George Bush, Mr. Obama, and Joe Biden?
Well, I honor the president, the commander-in-chief, regardless of party. I certainly spent a lot of time with President Bush because I worked intimately there, and I spent a significant amount of time with President Trump singing for the Trump administration. So, but I don't necessarily have a favorite, just because I always honor our president, certainly regardless of party. But I will say the consistency of all of them and all of the administrations, certainly in America, is we always welcome our friends well. I will certainly applaud President Biden because he did a great job, he and the First Lady, Dr. Biden, welcoming Prime Minister Modi to the United States, and certainly all of the pageantry and patriotism and the kindness that was shown to the Prime Minister, I thought was well done. And certainly his predecessor, President Trump, their interfaces certainly that President Trump and Prime Minister Modi had when he was visiting the United States, when President Trump went to visit India, President Obama when he went to visit India, and vice versa. I feel all the presidents have done a great job during their interfaces with the Prime Minister.
Now, having said that you have worked with the Bush administration to reach here, where of course in the middle you sang for the other two presidents as well. But one of the president's comments for India has sort of created also a furor, just like you have created a big rage back home and you have become almost an overnight star back in India, with billion of Indians actually looking to invite you to India and to see you even to Bollywood. I want to ask you that, because Mr. Obama said in an interview last week that India may start pulling apart if the minority rights are not protected. Do you think that this was not required, considering the White House also condemned, and his own party has condemned the timing of these comments? Do you think this was avoidable as well?
Well, Rohan, I'll tell you, if people who know me well know that I am not shy, I am honest when asked a question, so I'll be honest with you. I felt that the former president, I thought it was quite arrogant, to be very honest, for the former president to upstage the current president of the United States, who happened to be his vice president in his party, and upstage a very important week for the United States, both for the president and for the prime minister. So I found it to be quite arrogant, just to be very honest, for the former president to do that. That being said, I understand the concern that many people have about religious freedom across the world. This is not just an isolated conversation in India. This is a conversation about the attack on faith across the world. We are seeing the height of religious persecution across the world. And so I know that the Prime Minister cares about what is going on, certainly in India. He is a strong man of faith, as I'm a strong woman of faith. We share those common bonds, just like the United States and India share the common bonds of faith, strong family, and freedom. And religious freedom is included in that. So the timing of the former president's comments was wrong.
It's suspect.
Absolutely. But I do believe that the conversation of religious freedom must become a forefront conversation right now with every world leader. And it's my hope, using my platform and my voice, I want to help the Prime Minister. You know, I call him a new friend, certainly. I want to help the Prime Minister, let my platform and voice come alongside the Prime Minister to help address some of the conflicts that we're seeing happening in India. That includes Manipur as well. I certainly, as a Christian woman and a woman of faith, I've been watching and seeing what's happening there. And no person should be persecuted for their faith. Doesn't matter if you're Christian, Hindu, what religion. No person should be persecuted for their faith.
Correct.
The hallmark of a democracy is religious freedom. And so I know that the Prime Minister cares deeply about religious freedom. I know he cares deeply about any faith having the ability to exercise their faith. And so I want to do everything I can to help the Prime Minister with some of these conflicts. I'd love to come to India and sit with the Prime Minister and bring faith leaders of all religions to the table to talk about reconciliation and peace. You know, we don't want to see churches burned down. We don't want to see temples burned down or mosques. We don't want to see people persecuted for their faith.
Right.
And so I think the former president's comments, or perhaps his platform, could have been used in a different way in trying to bring solutions to the table for the conflicts that we're seeing happen across the world, rather than using the timing to criticize our greatest democratic partner.
But what has also perplexed the Indians is that President Obama, the former President Obama at that time, also had his both parents Muslims who followed Islam at one stage. It's a different matter altogether whether he embraced Christianity later on or not, which of course he tried best to clarify during his tenure, in the middle of the tenure, and also when he ran for elections. Do you actually believe that today the US has come off what has happened in the 2001 or 2001 Pentagon attacks by Al Qaeda, and that terror largely came from the radical part of the Islam?
Well, I don't know if I'm as astute to comment on some of those very sensitive matters, policy matters, and certainly as it relates to horrific periods here in the United States. But what I can say, Rohan, is that we are seeing the greatest attack on faith in the world today. We're seeing it certainly here in the United States in ways where religious freedom is being challenged in great waves. Certainly not to the extent
of any particular religion.
To be honest, you're just seeing a real attack on faith in general. Now, I certainly follow what's happening more intimately in the Christian faith, because that is my faith as a believer in Jesus Christ. But I can tell you, across the board, you're just seeing an assault on faith, period. And that is escalating in ways that are very dangerous, and they cannot go unchecked and unheard. And so I read a lot of comments this past week. I didn't come out and speak on what was happening, certainly in places across the world. And when I was asked questions about Manipur, I didn't want to upstage the Prime Minister's visit. I didn't want to upstage the President's visit. So I held my comments back until certainly
on Manipur?
Sure, until the visit was concluded. But I can tell you that I know that the Prime Minister, faith is important to him. And I know that he is concerned about what is happening in India, as any world leader would be concerned about what's happening in their country when there's an escalation of attack on faith. And again, that's Christians, Hindus, all faiths.
Any faith.
Absolutely. So what happened in the United States, what we saw with September 11th, and certainly what we're seeing across the world in the context of the escalation of terrorist attacks that are connected to religion, it's very real. And world leaders cannot be afraid to speak directly to what that is. When there is a connection of terrorism and extremism, religious extremism, world leaders cannot be afraid to speak up about that.
Correct.
And so I believe the G20 Summit in India is a great opportunity for the assembly of world leaders to really take on the conversation of religious freedom, really talk about this assault on faith that is happening across the world, that we as humanity, the motto of the G20 Summit is one earth, one family, one future.
Correct.
We as one humanity have to come together and not be afraid to say that religious freedom is a right to every human being. And whether you're a democracy or not, your God-given right to practice your faith is a God-given right.
Absolutely.
And so I believe that the G20 Summit is a great opportunity, certainly in India and certainly with the Prime Minister as the host.
Excellent.
To bring religious freedom to the conversation.
Absolutely.
And bring faith leaders to the table to bring reconciliation and peace in these areas.
So, as I understand from your performance for the Prime Minister Narendra Modi the other day, what if the BJP, India's ruling party, or for that matter any other party, invites you to campaign for them? Will you be open to the idea, since you have campaigned here for several people?
Absolutely. Sign me up. If the Prime Minister wants me to come to India to help campaign for his reelection, I'd be happy to. And here's why. I have had the great pleasure to be a part of, as you know, 4 consecutive U.S. presidents, administrations in the context of singing as a performer. That capacity performing has also given me a direct lens into the election season. And so one of the highlights that I certainly have as a part of my career was spending a lot of time with President Trump during 2016, certainly election, and extensively during the 2020 election.
So which was a major breakthrough events for you personally for Donald Trump in 16, 17?
Well, my first performance for President Trump was singing at the President's 58th inauguration victory celebration.
And the campaigns, election campaigns in the run-up to the presidential campaign?
So my first event was actually for the inauguration. I didn't sing on the campaign, but my first event was when he was elected. And it was so exciting and so beautiful. And then to spend 4 years of singing for the president's major fundraisers, on the road for campaign events, singing for his...
You campaigned for him even in 2020?
I did, very much.
Though it's unfortunate that he lost.
It is, but that's the beauty of certainly a democratic process, and I know that there were a lot of things going on during that election that I certainly won't get into, but I will say President Trump was a great president. If he's reelected, he will be a great president. I certainly say that in respect.
And you had the same opportunity for Mr. Biden as well?
Absolutely.
Singing?
Well, I was so honored to last December sing for our World War II veterans when the president invited them to the White House to honor them. And then there was a beautiful event there at the World War II Memorial. And so, Rohan, whenever you get asked to sing for a United States president, no matter what the party is, it's an honor.
Correct.
And so while I've spent a lot of time on the conservative side of the aisle, I have sung for Democratic presidents,
Correct.
certainly sung for Democrats, and I think that's important right now. We need a
absolutely.
bipartisan energy. But I can tell you, if the Prime Minister invited me to come to India to campaign for him, I'd do it, because I believe he is the best leader for India. I certainly believe he's the best leader for the U.S.-India relationship, and he's the best leader for India in the world.
But for that matter, Ms. Millben, over the past few weeks, I've seen also the opposition leader, Mr. Rahul Gandhi, traveling to the United States as well. Did you take a note of him as well?
A little bit, and I don't know Mr. Rahul, so I certainly don't want to say any comments that would, be unkind. But in listening to some of his speeches and his thoughts as it relates to his ambitions, I think it's very hard for any country, of any citizens, to sign up or vote for a leader who doesn't speak well of his country or her country. And I found that a lot of the comments that this gentleman would make, he spoke quite negatively about his country. And I think the mark of a great leader is to recognize the value of your heritage, to recognize the value of your country. And so I would just say I believe that's why Prime Minister Modi is so beloved in India, and why he's so beloved across the world, because
his party believes that
whatever he spoke of India is also against the Prime Minister and the BJP. So that's why he spoke against his country.
Well, I can say this. Prime Minister Modi is the best leader for India right now. He's the best leader for the U.S.-India relationship, and he's the best leader for India as it pertains to the world. And we need to demonstrate strength between the two largest democracies. And I believe that Prime Minister Modi in the position as Prime Minister adds to the strength of the U.S.-India relationship. And look, you can see as the Prime Minister travels across the world, he left to go to Egypt after the United States, and as he continues his travels, you can see how he is so beloved, not only in the Indian communities that exist in these countries, but he's beloved in communities across the world. That's because, Rohan, he's the true example of the Indian dream, how he came from humble beginnings. He spoke about that in his speech to the Joint Congress. About 30 years ago, he was standing looking at the White House, and here he is now as Prime Minister speaking before a joint session of Congress. That's the Indian dream. That's the inspiration that the Prime Minister brings to India and certainly brings to the extent of the world.
So on that note, I mean, considering that you have spoken so well eloquently about all these leaders, may I also ask you the clarity of thoughts that you have in your mind right now compels me to ask you about your childhood as well. I'm given to understand you had your childhood in a small village, like rustic environment as well. Is that right, or correct me? What was your childhood journey like? Your parents' impressions on you as a young kid, and also about your family as well.
Sure. Well, I grew up in Oklahoma, Oklahoma City. People would say, well, what's your childhood like? I'm just a small town girl, that grew up in the Midwest, and I loved my Midwest upbringings. And there's something very special about the Midwest. People call it the heartland of the country because
Correct.
It really is. You really get to see the essence of America when you visit the Midwest and the South. Both of my parents are retired ministers. My mother, who was a single mother, who divorced, who raised all four of us, my siblings. And I tell you, I give so much credit. In fact, I give all credit of my success to God first. But secondly, I give credit to my mother because she had a tough job while serving as a music pastor. She was a full-time mom and dad at the same time. And so much of our success, all of us, is contributed to her sacrifice and her hard work. And so I tell you, in fact, as soon as I leave here, interviewing with you, I'm going to go and see my mom in Arizona for a couple of days. Yeah.
So, and your sisters, how many sisters are you?
My eldest sister and my brother-in-law and the children are based in Arizona. I have a twin sister who's based...
Twin sister?
I do.
So what does she do?
So my twin sister, it's interesting. We kind of had the divide and conquer philosophy. I went into the trajectory of working in politics while she was doing music, and then we kind of switched lives. Then she went into the trajectory of politics, and I went into music and entertainment. So we have these common bonds. So
between you, who did you campaign for, and who
well,
did she campaign for?
I worked as a young staffer for President Bush, and at that time she was active in music and law school and things like that, and then she came into politics and worked for President Obama, and I went into entertainment and music. So I spent a lot of my time on the conservative side. She spends a lot of her time on the Democratic side, but we both have a spirit of bipartisanship nature. We both understand that at the end of the day, we're all Americans. And so my mother taught us that in the context of you can have great influence when you learn how to be a voice for all people. And so I'm very proud of my sister. She's done a great job of serving the country, certainly as she worked for President Obama. And now she's doing a wonderful job with a great company that works in a lot of areas of education and children, those types of areas. So she's doing a great job.
Now considering a deluge of comments that you have received from the Indians, yeah. I'm sure some of them would be marriage proposals as well.
Yeah.
Were they?
I did get a lot of...
The laughter suggests they were.
There were a lot of nice people and nice gentlemen, and for some reason, they thought that I would be convinced to come back to India with them after hearing me sing. But that's okay. It's not my first rodeo with enamored fans, but they were all very kind. And I tell you, I know how important marriage and family is in India. That's the same way it is in the African American community.
So did you size up those marriage proposals?
No, No, I'm a little busy right now, Rohan. So I appreciate their kindness and their invitations, but I have a very expensive dry cleaning bill. I don't think they want to pay for that.
I also see that you carry a book of yourself which carries the name for yourself on the book's cover, Mary Millben. What is this book about?
Well, it's the Holy Bible, and that is my blueprint for life. As a woman of faith, as a Christian woman, I certainly believe my Savior, Jesus Christ, and so the Bible, the Holy Bible, is our blueprint for life. It is our manuscript for how we live and move.
So you carry it always?
I carry it everywhere I go. Every plane, every car.
But your name is also imprinted on the cover of the book.
It is. So that way, if by chance I were to be left somewhere or something were to happen,
you can easily identify it.
People would know exactly whose book that is. And so, yes.
So whatever you say is always the gospel.
Well, Rohan, I aim to be a representative of heaven. I aim to be a representative of God. And I always want to my mother always taught us, you always represent God on every stage or every place you go, and you always represent your country on every stage and every place you go. And so I always work very hard to do my best. I'm not perfect. Only Jesus was perfect, but I aim to be a light and example for the kingdom of God, and to be a light and example for my country.
So I'm going to make your life a little more easier here, Mary. I want to understand from you today,
Yes.
who is your favorite Bollywood icon or the star, or whose songs you have always revered and taken as a landmark or a benchmark to start with? You're practicing in Hindi.
Well, I can tell you, I love Bollywood films. My mother and I, during COVID year, we would sit and watch 3 or 4 films a day, and of course,
Oh my God.
we love Bollywood films, and particularly because we love the music, we love the dance breaks. I started a career in Broadway theater in New York, here in the United States, so there's a lot of similarities with the dance breaks and the music, certainly in Bollywood films it relates to Broadway. And so I probably would say my favorite singer or female voice was Lataji, of course, who was a revered singer, God rest her soul, in her passing, in India, and certainly for the Prime Minister and for many films. But I love Lataji's voice, and so she probably is my favorite voice. I would say my favorite actor, well, of course everybody says Shah Rukh Khan, but Shah Rukh Khan really is probably my favorite male actor. We love all of his films, and I love Shah Rukh Khan, his life, because what we call the American dream, he's the Indian dream in India. Seeing his journey into film and his humble beginnings, and seeing how he is certainly a big star in India and across the world. I love how he's also been a big advocate for women empowerment in film, and so he's probably my favorite actor holistically because of his career too.
So who's actually your favorite actresses in the Bollywood industry?
I love all of the female actresses. They're all so very talented. I probably have to say, Rohan, Sridevi Kapoor is probably my favorite.
Oh, amazing.
I love, she's such a vibrance, and certainly her music, but even some of her what we would call in the United States more straight acting, not necessarily the dancing and music, but her straight acting in the latter part of her years. Beautiful moments on screen, and so she's probably my favorite of all. But I tell you, my mother and I shared so many beautiful moments watching the films, and it's where I learned so much about the traditions and the values of the Indian culture. And so probably my bucket list, Rohan, is to sometime soon in the near future, I'd love to experience a Bollywood film. I'd love to experience the excitement that all of your actors and actresses experience of being on set and doing these incredible breakout music and dance moments.
So is it possible if I can actually ask you to hum any particular song that you recall of Lata Mangeshkar ji, or of any actor, or probably I can do that and you can do?
Well, you probably have to sing the words, because I'm not comfortable yet with my Hindi. Just
Oh, so
that's not Lataji though.
That's not Lataji. That's Harshdeep Kaur. But let me tell you the lyrics. I've interviewed the singer about 6 months back.
And I love her artistry.
That song is Heer Heer na aakho diyo main te sahiba hoi घोड़ी लेके आवे ले जावे ले जाए मिर्जा कोई.
Yes, I love that song. I love that film too. I also
हीर हीर ना आखा adiyo मैं ते साहिबा कोई.
you have a great voice, Rohan.
Thank you so much.
Oh my goodness. And then I love this song. It's from the film we were talking about off screen. Shah Rukh Khan works for the Punjabi electric place, but they're in the temple where they're visiting, and the lyrics speak to how she sees God in Shah Rukh Khan's character. Da da dee da dee da dee da 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 dee da dee da 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 dee da dee da 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 dee.
Is it the movie where he's wearing a mustache?
Yes.
Oh,
Yes,
yeah,
it's an older film.
Yes.
But the words speak to how
Absolutely.
she sees God in it.
You know a lot about the Hindu
Well,
films
I
as
don't
well.
know the words yet, so I'm going to learn them.
Excellent. I want to know from you which are the Hindi songs that are today actually closest to you that you can speak completely, and if you can do that for our audience back
Well,
home.
it's a song that certainly you grew up and all Indian households grew up learning and singing. The beautiful Hindu hymn, which I have come to love for these last several years after performing for India's 74th Independence Day in 2020, and the performance that certainly created such an intimacy with India, and that's Om Jai Jagdish Hare.
Wow.
And you have to sing it with me. So
Absolutely.
Om Jai Jagdish Hare, Swami Jai Jagdish Hare, Bhakta Jano ke Sankata, Das Jano ke Sankata, Shanam me dura kare. Om Jai Jagdish Hare, Om Jai Jagdish Hare.
Okay, so a rapid fire round for you.
Yes.
Before we end this interview.
Yes.
Shah Rukh Khan, Amitabh Bachchan, Madhavan,
Yes.
Sridevi,
All of them.
Prime Minister Modi. Who's your favorite?
Well, of course, the Prime Minister. I mean, that's hard to even say. And I'll say this to end. I have such a great admiration and respect for the Prime Minister. And all those actors and actresses would say the same thing I did. He's a great leader. He's doing extraordinary things in India. And certainly, he's a great leader for the world. And so I'm looking forward to seeing the Prime Minister again.
So I'm going to repeat the question again.
Yes.
Shah Rukh Khan or Will Smith?
Yeah, well, that's kind of hard. They're both great men, but I probably will say I don't know Shah Rukh Khan personally. I have met Will Smith certainly, and Will Smith's a great man, a great actor, and a great creative. But they're both great men. They're
Okay,
both great
a
men.
career in DC, New York, Los Angeles, or a career in Bombay?
Oh, a career in Bombay. I want to move to India tomorrow. I've had enough of the United States. I love my country, but I tell you, I loved India so much when we visited last August. I'm ready to buy a home in India.
A shaved ice cream on the beaches of Miami, or vada pav in Bombay, or dosa in Bangalore?
Oh gosh, or how about a shaved ice cream in Goa? That's where I really want to visit. Oh my
Excellent.
goodness.
All right. The flight next morning to New Delhi to take up your new assignment,
Yes.
or flight today to New York?
Oh, flight to Delhi. The Prime Minister, he just has to make the call, and I'll be on a plane to India in a hot second.
Excellent. One last question.
Yes.
George Bush, Prime Minister Modi, Joe Biden, in the order of the priority, who do you think is today the world looks up to over the last 30 years or so?
Well, I certainly,
Or
I
Obama
always,
as well.
I always give respect to our president, no matter the party. But I will say, I certainly, as an American, I would honor our president first. So whether it's President Bush, President
Absolutely.
Obama, President Trump, certainly who's a very dear friend, and President Biden, we honor our commander-in-chief regardless
Correct.
of party. But I certainly will say Prime Minister Modi is, I believe, one of the most important world leaders today. And that's because of how India is positioned in the world, certainly to impact and make a difference for humanity. So the Prime Minister has a tremendous position, a tremendous position of influence to bringing stability and peace to the region. And certainly his relationship as it pertains to the U.S.-India relationship. This is the strongest I have seen the U.S.-India relationship in my interfaces and years of being in American politics. I certainly will credit President Trump because he made a lot of inroads in strengthening that relationship under his 4 years, and that has continued under President Biden. And so
Absolutely.
that is a big contribution and credit to the Prime Minister.
Absolutely. On this note, I actually want to thank you, Ms. Millben,
you.
for this wonderful interview and giving us the opportunity at the New Indian to meet you in flesh today and to know more about you. We wish you all the best for all the future endeavors. We wish you to become a rising to become a sensation star of the United States and of course the world as well for what you have done for the two communities to bring together. And we also wish you a generous career in Bollywood if you ever come to India as well.
Well, I'm enjoying my job as being a voice and an ambassador between two great countries, and certainly enjoying being a voice for.
We hope you look forward to seeing this interview on the New Indian.
Yes, I look forward to it. Thank you, Rohan, for having me.
Thank you so
Namaste.
much,
Namaste.
Ms. Millben. Thank you so much.
Namaste.